Hi, I'm Robert, and this is the Manhattan Wood Project. This project is my entry into the 2015 Summers Woodworking 2x4 contest. It's coming in right at the end of the month, but it's going to get there just in time. So stay tuned, let's see what I made.
Well, what should I make today? Manhattan Wood Project. That looks great!
A few weeks before the Summers Woodworking 2x4 contest started, I had a vague idea that I wanted to do an Intarsia project, but I didn't know what subject to use. I wanted to do a landscape of the Los Alamos area, but there's just so much I couldn't decide which one would be appropriate. While pondering the decision, I took my kids to Ashley Pond to feed the ducks and geese that live there. I took a couple pictures, and one of them was unforgettable. Once again, my kids were my inspiration for another woodworking project. To make the photo into a cutting template, I traced the important parts using GIMP, then printed it out into a full-size template using Matthias Wandl's program Big Print. I planned to make it 20 inches tall, which made the whole thing print out on 9 pages. After picking out the perfect 2x4 and making a trash talk video, I cut the 2x4 into a few pieces. One piece was destined for the backboard in the small pieces, so I cut it into 1/4 inch thick strips. I glued a couple of backboard pieces together and planed them all down until they were smooth and the same thickness. All of the boards were still slightly warped because, well, they came from a 2x4, so I cut a few strips to act as stiffeners for the backboard and glued the backboard together. There was quite a bit of creative clamping, but it worked out well. I only glued 5 pieces together instead of 6, making the final picture no more than 17 inches tall, but I planned early on to remove most of the distant background that occupied the top of the photo so the focus would be on the kids. Next it was time to start the detail work. I cut out the pieces from the template, numbered them, then sprayed glue onto a few remaining thin strips of wood and stuck the template pieces down. I spent a big part of the next week sitting at the scroll saw cutting out lots of pieces, big and small. After cutting everything out, I smoothed the edges using hand files.
Look at that, honey. Perfect fit. Glad I'm using all these files.
Really?
What?
Really? Just hand files? You've never used anything else?
I haven't used anything but hand files. Look at this. A big, beautiful collection of hand files for all this delicate work.
Okay, I may have used the Dremel type tool for a small portion of the sanding, maybe 90%, no more than 95%. It made a lot of the detail work very easy and quick, like hair and sleeves, and made it easy to thin edges down so the pieces were more three-dimensional. The pieces of the wooden dock were much easier to smooth by using a piece of sandpaper glued to a sheet of glass, so maybe the Dremel was only used for 75% of the sanding. There were a lot of small pieces, but I was able to keep track of them by writing the piece number on the back side and keeping it in a separate pile. There was only one small problem.
Oh man, oh no, no, no. How am I going to tell my wife that I lost my little boy's hand? Oh crap. Oh, I think I know what to do. Whew. All right. Let's see if I can make his hand again before she finds out. Whew. I don't think she'll notice that.
Time to glue down the pieces. I clamped my squarest framing square to the backboard and used it as a guide for the dock pieces. After they were glued down, everything else was relatively easy enough to put in place. The downside of using strips of 2x4 for this project was that large pieces had quite a bit of bowing, which required even more creative clamping. Unfortunately, a couple pieces were so bowed and large that they cracked while they were being clamped. I was also unable to see if the pieces had moved slightly since I was using paint cans as weights, so a couple pieces ended up shifting around a little bit. I wasn't happy with it the next morning, but I wasn't about to try to take the pieces off after the glue was dry. After everything was glued down, I cut the picture to size. I'd moved the ducks in a little closer to the kids to make the picture a little less wide. I used my framing square to mark an outline to cut to, then cut the edge off using a little handsaw. Then I gave the picture a few coats of gloss lacquer. Now I wanted to make a nice frame for the picture and used a large part of the remaining 2x4 to make some frame strips. I used the table saw to cut grooves on two sides of each board, then routed a pattern and roundovers into them. Then I cut each board in half to give me 4 full frame pieces. I added another roundover on the front and some slight chamfers on the back, then sanded them by hand up to 220 grit. No, really, this was by hand. I cut miters on the frame pieces, glued opposite corners together, then cut them to size. I wanted to reinforce the corners, but I thought the wood would split if I tried putting a spline in. So I ended up gluing a small spline on the back of each corner. I wanted the frame to look different from the picture, so I let my wife pick a stain to use. She chose colonial maple, which I think was a great choice. I added a little pre-stained wood conditioner, then stained the frame pieces together. After the stain was dry, I put the picture in the frame and glued the frame together. Now I wanted to use my frame clamps that I made a couple years ago, but one of the frame pieces had warped a little bit and I was afraid that I would damage the frame clamp if I applied the pressure necessary to get everything aligned. So I ended up using all of my long clamps.
After the glue on the frame was dry, I added the contest entry picture on the back, along with my logo and a 2015 penny.
Then I gave the frame a couple coats of gloss lacquer as well as the front and back of the picture. I added a couple of small eye hooks and some picture wire to hang the picture with, and gave it a place of honor in the living room. This project was a lot of fun to build, and gave me something that's going to hang in the house for a long time. It also caused me to break out of my cheap project groove and make something new, even though I still use the cheap 2x4. I want to thank Brian Gidney of Summers Woodworking for running this contest for the 3rd time, and all of the sponsors for donating the prizes that they donated. A contest like this brings together the whole woodworking community and encourages all of us to try something new with awesome results, usually. If you like this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you really liked it, or if you like my channel, please consider subscribing. You can hit the big subscribe channel below, or hit my little logo up here. Also, please consider subscribing to my upcycling channel, Round Trip Upcycling. You just click on the logo right up here. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you on the next project.